Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll start with the Park and Rec Committee meeting by approving our last meeting's minutes. I get a motion for approval, please.
Make a motion to approve it.
Okay, it's been moved. Thank you. Been moved by Lombardo, second by Mosley. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, thank you. We don't have any legislation before us, but we do have guest presentation. So at this time, Ms. Viviano, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our guest, please. I think we lost Ms. Viviano. Okay, Mayor, would you happen to know who our guest are that's going to present to us today, sir, from Guidehouse?
Yes, I do. I'll start off. Thank you for giving me a few moments to talk about, I think, public space. And in a lot of our discussions around, how we need to improve a lot of our facilities, I think I am of an age, I know, where I went to a park or I went somewhere, it was usually to participate in a sport. And I think evolving over these last 25 or 30 years, parks and public spaces have taken on a different meaning, which I think is great. They can mean different things to different people. And so how we've looked at public space, obviously we have a significant amount of public space. When it comes to community centers, when it comes to the community learning centers, all our park areas. Even going back 4 or 5 years and looking at some of the facilities and trying to incorporate some of those improvements into the capital budget, I think what the American Rescue Plan dollars give us a chance to do is really invest in some of that public space of where people go. And we've looked at a lot of those facilities over the last 4 or 5 years and kind of identified some of those critical needs. Like I said, sometimes those mean things to different people. And I think we have to respect that part of it. They also do include sporting, I guess, venues when it comes to baseball courts or tennis courts or things, or basketball courts or anything like that. But investing into that public space of where we've been, I think is significant. And I think it's an excellent use of our American Rescue Plan dollars. And I know you'll get into some of the specifics about that, but I just wanted to kind of give you a high level view of what we were thinking around public space. And even going back to the beginning days of the pieces of legislation, this was a strong argument from people across the country of public space. Because when you kind of look at the effects of COVID and what happened immediately, obviously the governor and governors across the country, and some did and some didn't, said, listen, hey, we need to stop doing stuff. And so obviously when you have the effect of not being able to go to a public space, that has an effect on the community, where they can go for programming, where they can go to do homework, a lot of those different things that mean things to different people. So we think it definitely an investment into that, into these specific facilities. And if they get into the specifics as part of the presentation and guess the reasoning behind that, I think is an important investment into the community. And even when you look at the partnership with Akron Public Schools and the community learning centers, we still have a significant number of structures around community centers out there that are sometimes partnered with libraries. Those are still public spaces. And investing into those where they need it the most, I think, is we are at a critical point, I think, in our history about being able to, about make a critical investment. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it. I will turn it back over to Sean Volman or whoever I'm supposed to kick it to, and we'll kind of go from there. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I will then, in turn, kick it over to Katie Brack, who will, and I don't know if you were first or one of our Guidehouse reps were first, but
I am first, Sean.
Well, let's go on ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chairman Neal and members of the committee. I'm Katie Brack from the Office of Integrated Development. It is definitely a privilege for me to be here with you to kick off today's presentation on our plan to invest American Rescue Plan dollars into our parks and public spaces. Many of you know, and as the mayor had shared, many of these projects were already in development prior to the city receiving ARPA dollars. I think it's rather fortuitous that we are in a position to invest these dollars into projects that were resident-led and ready to go. ARPA brings a much-needed accelerant to help us move forward even faster. However, when the initial guidance came out, we found that parks and public spaces were not eligible for ARPA dollars. Through the assistance of Congressman Tim Ryan, the city made an inquiry with the U.S. Department of Treasury on whether or not ARPA could be used. In a matter of days, Treasury updated their FAQ to answer that improving outdoor spaces can be an eligible use of funds. This was a huge win for the residents of Akron because we know that during lockdown, our public spaces became areas of respite and exercise, where people felt the safest interacting with others during times of isolation. Throughout this presentation, you will hear from Priyam Khan from Guidehouse, who will share with us eligibility requirements for ARPA dollars to be spent on public spaces. I will walk through each project and share a brief summary. Beginning with the Summit Lake Vision Plan, a 4-phase development as a part of the Akron Civic Commons 2.0, will restore this treasure to its natural beauty. This resident-led process began in 2016 and will result in a new recreation area for all of Akron in the region. We've seen cities across the country capitalize on waterfront areas, so why not in Akron? Once completed, Summit Lake will feature a multi-purpose trail, kayak and boat launch, fishing area, and a new pavilion area. This investment is truly once in a generation. We need to seize the moment and give our residents, especially our children, spaces where they can experience the beauty of nature and recreation they may not have had the chance to experience otherwise. We intend to use ARPA to support the renovation of Lock 3, Akron Central Park. Lock 3 keeps residents and visitors at the center of what we do and will transform this vital space into a monumental park with beautiful gardens, meandering pathways, all while maintaining the features we love, like a new performance pavilion, beer garden, and ice skating rinks. Next, we will share with you the renovations we propose to our community centers and pools. In the same vein of our public spaces, community centers and our pools offer spaces for residents to participate in recreation and other programming. While we intend to renovate all of our community centers in the coming years, the American Rescue Plan makes it possible to renovate those existing centers that are in the greatest need of an upgrade. We aim to begin with Ed Davis, Patterson, and Reservoir, along with the Reservoir and Perkins pools. As you will hear more, these projects are exciting investments of American Rescue Plan dollars and will truly bolster the quality of life for Akron. At this time, I invite Priyam from Guidehouse to walk us through the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Sorry, I was struggling to find my unmute button there. Well, good afternoon, Chairman Neal and members of the committee. As Katie mentioned, I'm a consultant with Guidehouse, working with Cabinet to help with the state and local fiscal recovery funds with reporting and compliance. So the administration has identified the need to invest in parks and public spaces to enhance the well-being of Akron residents during this pandemic. The identified projects mentioned today will assist in mitigating the spread of COVID-19 and increase recreational accessibility for the community. The state and local fiscal recovery funds can support the city's desire to improve parks and public spaces. The federal guidance outlines eligibility by stating that investing in public outdoor spaces can promote healthier living environments, address health disparities and social determinants of health, and promote safe recreation and socialization to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. The U.S. Treasury has reporting requirements of state and local fiscal recovery fund recipients. The expenditure category that aligns with investment in parks and public spaces is social determinants of health. The social determinants of health are factors and conditions that can influence someone's health and well-being. Parks and public spaces play a role in shaping neighborhoods and the built environment. Quality park and recreational spaces that are accessible, properly designed with community input, and well-programmed have been shown to reduce area crime and violence. Parks and green space improve air, water, and environmental conditions in communities. Public spaces such as rec centers promote access to physical activity opportunities for people to move more and increase access to programs and socialization, creating social cohesion in communities. So Katie gave a high-level overview of some of the projects that we'll be talking about today, but I'm going to turn it back over to her to give a little more detail.
Thanks, Priyam. First, we have an investment of $2 million towards the Summit Lake Vision Plan. This is part of the Akron Civic Commons 2.0, where the city and the Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition, Knight Foundation, and other partners are working in partnership with neighborhood residents to reimagine and transform this area into its fullest potential as a beautiful public space for residents and trail users to enjoy. The Ohio and Erie Canal Summit Lake Trail is currently under design with a completion date of January 2022. The goal is to bid the Ohio and Erie Canal Summit Lake Trail in the first quarter of 2022. The contract was signed with City Architecture for the design of the Summit Lake North Shore. Design will begin this January with an anticipated completion in 2022 so that we can reach our goal to begin construction in 2023. Next, we have the LAC 3 Vision Plan, which will beautifully transform this space into one that fully realizes its potential as a 24/7 active public park. LAC 3 is currently under design by Olin Studios from Philadelphia. Recently, we held a very successful open house on October 14th, where Olin shared the latest renderings and solicited user feedback. We were energized by the positive feedback we received and feel very enthusiastic about the promise of this space as we move to the next phase of the design. Olin Studios will return to Akron in the first quarter of 2022 to provide an update based on that feedback from the community. The proposed completion for design is in the second quarter of 2022. Our goal is to begin construction in September of 2022, right at the close of the season. I wanted to note that during the federal appropriations process, we supported an ask led by the Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition, which was submitted to Congressman Ryan and Senator Sherrod Brown for $1 million in federal funding for LAC 3. And I'm proud to say that our federal representatives championed this request as it was inserted in the final appropriations bill. While the infrastructure bill passed, all the remaining appropriation bills are part of the continuing resolution, which will be voted upon on or before December 3rd when the current CR is set to expire. We are grateful to Congressman Ryan and Senator Brown for sharing in the vision of LAC 3, and I believe that this will one day be a regional asset that will attract even more visitors to our downtown. Last, we have the Community Recreation Center revitalization and upgrades to our city pools. The city completed an extensive evaluation of the conditions of our community centers and our pools. The results were that many needed significant renovations and upgrades. 3 that rose to the top were Ed Davis, Patterson, Reservoir, along with Reservoir and Perkins pools. We know that these centers offer so much more to our residents. We plan on improving the centers and increasing accessibility to create spaces that will be exciting to our residents and enhance the quality of life here in Akron. This concludes our presentation on our plan to use ARPA to invest in parks and public spaces. Now I invited Michelle DeFiore from the City of Akron and Dan Rice from OECC to join the meeting today. And I think that between the 4 of us, we will be able to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much for your time.
Ms. Viviano, are they with us?
Yes. Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Were we waiting for them to present as well?
No, we're just here for questions. I
Oh.
invited them to answer any
Okay.
questions that you may have.
Okay. Well, we'll open up. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you can see that Councilwoman Connor has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the information that the pool and the community center are both going to be taken on at Reservoir Park, and with the understanding that since the infrastructure bill passed, they may be rebuilding the entire reservoir, what are the chances that all 3 will be done at once so you don't tear it up and then tear up the thing next to it? And that the park just be kind of closed down for a year and tackle all 3 projects at once?
Thank you, Councilwoman Connor. This is Michelle DeFiore. That is something that we are talking about, but we've not come to any resolution on, and it's certainly something that we would bring back to the ward members and discuss with further. So we're still evaluating what the duration of the construction of each of the projects is, and we're still evaluating whether or not that reservoir is included with that infrastructure bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Connor. Mr. Mobian?
I'm not on your committee. I want to make sure I wait.
Okay. Well, let me get Mr. Malik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone who presented. Very excited about the investments that are going to be made. I think there's a lot of great things here. One comment, I guess maybe two comments, but one question first. There was a line item previously in the initial document shared by Guidehouse about the Akron Youth Conservation Corps. Are we going to talk about that in a different meeting or at a future time?
Hi, Councilman Malik. We are not prepared to go forward with the internal discussions at this time on that. It is something that we are, it's an idea we like. It's a project we like, but we're still working through. I need to see what the final guidelines are.
Okay, thank you. It certainly sounded really interesting and promising. So
I agree. I think it would be a very good project.
We'll look forward to talking about it at a future time. Two thoughts. Appreciate all of the time and effort that has gone into the visioning at Lock 3. The only comment that I would have is that with the amount of public money that's going to be put in, I hope that we sort of consider whether or not to have ticketed events going forward and just have free events, because, especially with having removed the fences, putting up temporary fences and creating those obstacles, for what is ultimately small price of admission, it may be worth it to make it as inclusive as possible. I hope that's something that's considered going forward. And then the other point is that, the investments here are heavily weighted towards capital programming and construction. I understand that those are often the largest line items, but I do just want to note that, would like to see more operational capacity and programming capacity for Parks and Rec. Obviously, Parks and Rec is operated on, shoestring staff and shoestring budget for many years. And I know at many of our community centers, the staff does a lot with what they have, but there's a lot more that could be offered in terms of programming, especially as we're talking about giving youth opportunities to do things, and stay out of trouble. So I hope that that's something that's considered, especially, I don't know the degree to which some of these projects can potentially also be funded with infrastructure projects. So are there any thoughts that you have about that, Mr. Volman, or anyone else on the team?
We are open to any and all suggestions as to ideas for spend, as we've said throughout, for spending the rescue funds. I think there's a lot of potential overlap in some of the different buckets. That we talk about is something, violence prevention versus, something at one of the community centers. But again, this is not a sprint. It's a marathon, and we are open to any and all suggestions and looking at what makes the most sense.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malik. I see your hand, Mr. Mobian and Mr. Kamer, but what I'd like to do is tap a member of the committee, Ms. Mosley, Councilwoman Mosley.
Thank you, Chairman Neal. Just a quick question. I appreciate the centers that you all mentioned. As Councilman Malik mentioned, Parks and Rec usually has the bottom end of the capital budget. So I'm hoping that within this plan, maybe it wasn't addressed or will be later down the line, is making sure that we don't forget about the other public parks, the other public spaces. We got Joy Park, we got Firestone Park, we got other community centers that need some assistance as well. And hopefully we're using some of this funding, because again, when we get to the capital, we never seem to be able to have enough to spread the love. And also to our pocket parks, because we have pocket parks across the city. Sometimes it's easier for families to take a kid to a park that's right in the neighborhood than taking them across the city. Like, for example, we have Marcy Street. They have a pocket park over there between Bellows and Marcy. That is a defunct park. But those kids can't go to Morgan Park because we have a building next to it that is collapsing. So just want to keep that in mind, making sure we don't forget about those other community parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Mr. Mobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead. I think my questions overlap the ones that have come before me.
Mr.
But
Mobian, we're having a hard time hearing you.
essentially, I was concerned about beefing up programming. Oh, can you hear me now?
You can now. Won't move.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Don't move.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. My question had a lot to do with the question, and that is beefing up staffing and programming in these centers. And I just wanted to know, can we use these dollars for that? That's the first question. The second question is, if we could address the community centers before we look at Lock 3, although Lock 3 is very important, I just want us to really get to our communities as soon as we can. Those community centers are real critical to having neighborhood programming and opportunities for children to engage in positive things. Just asking a question, is that possible? I know you identified 2 centers in particular, and I'm not sure how many you plan to get to in this first round.
Mr. Mobian, you want to answer
Yeah,
that?
I can, and I can maybe defer to, I don't have any specific answers about what programs are eligible or ineligible to be funded by the Rescue Plan funds. It was probably, there's a lot of case by case basis for something like that. So, I don't know to what extent Guidehouse has, looked at programmatic activities at these, but I can defer to them. As far as the rec centers, the 3 initial ones that were listed, I believe as 1, 2, and 3 in need on the study that was done a few years back was Reservoir, Patterson, and Ed Davis. And those would be the first 3 that we would be looking at tackling. And those would not be held up in any, that would not be held up in any way with the projects that are going on with the project at Lot 3 or Summit Lake. But Priam, do you have anything to add?
Thanks, Sean. I will mention that capital investments on the rec centers are contingent on the expansion of programming. So Guidehouse is doing a deep dive on the infrastructure bill to help guide that expansion, what programs may be eligible. I don't know if anybody else on my team would like to comment.
We did have a discussion with our internal experts on the expansion and the use of dollars with regards to community rec centers. We have to have a good understanding of who those rec centers are serving, where they're located, what are the programs that they're providing, and how the improvement to that infrastructure for those rec centers will be basically paramount in order to continue the programs that are happening at those rec centers. So specific programs would fall in line with funding, and then funding additions or updates to the infrastructure could be justified with the use of those programs.
When you said who they will be serving, you mean the neighborhoods, the makeup of the neighborhoods? I'm sorry, the makeup of the neighborhoods, is that all going into that? Is that what you're talking about?
So we would need information, for example, either where the rec center is, if it's in a qualified census tract. We would need information if it's not in a qualified census tract, then we would need information that the rec center could collect, such as names or just even zip codes of those people who they're serving. If the program is being run at the rec center, but they collect their own information and data on the participants, for example, income levels or their use of free lunches or any of those types of things. There's a lot of different ways that we could justify. The qualified census tract is a proxy, but if we got additional information on the individual participants, we could use that information to justify who those programs are serving.
I see you, Mr. Kamer. I just want to make one comment, sir. If you don't
Mr.
mind.
Chair, can I just ask?
You still have something else, Mr. Mobian?
I just wanted to follow just quickly. Could Guidehouse provide us with more information around the qualified census tracts? Because it sounds like there could be information that could be useful as we move through this process.
Yes, we can definitely provide resources and additional information on the qualified census tracts. We'll have the team kind of pull that up. We are also using that as a indicator, a possible proxy for the violence prevention programs as well. So we do have that information ready and can share it with you all.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Kimmer, I'll let you go and then I'll bring mine in afterwards, sir. Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just want to echo what my colleague, Councilwoman Mosley said earlier. I noticed the first slide of the presentation was actually Firestone Park itself, outside of the community center, along the walkway. Yeah, I would really appreciate if we can look at having small pots of money for each community center throughout the city of Akron, besides Reservoir and Patterson and Ed Davis and Summit Lake. Obviously, now I'm learning more as other folks, my colleagues ask questions and you're explaining it. But moving forward, a lot of us that's been on council for a while, we do know Parks and Rec has been at the bottom of the budget in regards to trying to spend some money at these parks. So whatever we can do moving forward, I'd really appreciate that. And I would like to be part of that conversation because I feel that it's important to include all these other community centers and parks that aren't in the large scale budget that was presented today. So thank you.
Thank you.
I see you, Mr. Malik, but if you don't mind, sir, I'm gonna make my comments and I'll come back. Try to capture these. One thing is critical, talking about our different parts, is that we don't build them for what we see today, but we build them and project them for what they can be and not limit our perception or goals for the demographic in that community or we're not, because when it comes to recreation, I don't care if you're a child in the richest part of our community or the more economically challenged. I think we all get into the same types of activities. What limits them is the resources that make their full engagement available. And so with that, I'm saying I'm hoping, and this is some of the challenge as council when we said we want to be a part of this process, not on the outside looking in, but truly engaged, because each one of us knows intimately our areas. I don't know how much youth are engaged in telling us about our park and recs right now. Some members on council that have been on part of council for some time may remember where some residents from our youth from our ward had already done the research. They went and they looked at all the park and recreation departments in communities around us. They went to Cargo Falls, they went to Barber, they went to Stowe, and looked at the disparities between their recreation centers and ours. And so they can tell us, and I think I shared this with some of my colleagues when looking at parking spots. Automatically, we think, oh, they want basketball hoops and courts. You know what they wanted in our rec centers? They wanted Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. A lot of their recreation now is online. We may not consider it recreation, but they wanted a safe space where they could go and so I'm hoping that we engage them in the process. And the youth in my ward may have a little bit different focus than the youth in some other wards. So we need that well-rounded. So hopefully we're strategic in making sure that we're really engaging them at this time. My other thing is that as we build these out, that again, we build them for the future. And I'm going to use this example. We built all of our schools. Now, I can't say for the last one, but to my knowledge, now one of our schools have an electronic charging station. All of the major manufacturers are saying we're not going to be building any more gas vehicles, but not one of our schools has an electronic charging station. Correct me if I'm wrong. If we're looking at these park and rec centers, they need to have electronic charging stations. We need to be thinking futuristic. If we're going to put a basketball court in there, we need to put big screen for esports and engagement for learning and what's not. And my concern is that when we don't have everybody included, I'm going to use a phrase from Mr. Joseph Coleman from my ward. None of us are as smart as all of us. And so we need everybody at the table. I just hope we do that. The other thing is we build these out, we have to look at this as investment. How are these things going to be sustainable? So when we're looking at our park, we need to look at those grassroots organizations, those neighborhood block clubs, those baseball teams, football teams that do everything on a shoestring budget and make sure that they are engaged in our planning process for sustainability. Because these dollars are going to have to be expensed by 2026. So whatever we do, we have to have a sustainability plan in place to make sure that it exists. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues of focusing on pocket parks and recreational parks, because Lock 3 is such a gem. We can leverage that with corporate sponsorship to do what we need to do there. Not to say to take away from it, but we've had many engaged conversations. Corporations would love to be able to have a banner or a station there to fund that initiative and forming partnerships there. So I hope we keep that in mind, as well as forget which councilperson said it, making sure, and I think you alluded to it, Mr. Bowman, making sure with this infrastructure, Build Back Better dollars that are coming, and let us not forget our regular annual budget, making sure, and our community partners, good to see you, Mr. Rice, on how we can leverage these collective dollars so that we can make sure that these dollars, the American Rescue Plan dollars, again, remember they came because of poverty and housing instability, address those needs as much as possible. Last but not least, some time ago, and well, two more things, council passed some legislation to create what we call a neighborhood mobile resource center. And looking at that, Rochester, New York actually has a mobile park and recreation mobile. With a growing part of our population being our seniors, some make it out to our rec centers, but a lot of them live in housing developments. Having a mobile resource, recreational resource, I don't know if these dollars could cover that, connected with programming where we could go and engage them in all kind of healthy activities, even taking some of the electronic, like Wii, those kind of, just again, thinking futuristic. I hope we do that. And so I'll stop because I got more, but I want to turn it over to Mr. Malik. He's been waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two things I wanted to get more information about. The conversation that just happened about leveraging funds for Lock 3. I think, Mr. Rice, that's something that is happening, right? Part of the city's investment is only a small part of that total project. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yes, Councilman Malik, and thank you for having us here. And Chairman Neal, thank you also for having us here. You're absolutely correct that the total cost for Lock 3 is estimated at $10 million. And of that $10 million, through the incredible support of the city, council, and our individual donors, as well as our foundations, we've raised over $8 million to date. And that includes $4 million from the Knight Foundation, about $661,000 from individual donors. Summit County government has also made a contribution of $250,000. Our organization has put about $112,000. In the state of Ohio, about $75,000. So, Chairman Neal, you are absolutely correct that is our intention with all of these projects, is to leverage as much as we can of outside dollars, so that we can utilize those city investment dollars, in our community centers and other places throughout the city. And then also I would echo Chairman Neal, your point about stewardship. That is a high priority for us, all the parks and assets need to look as beautiful 10 years from now as they look today. And so we are committed to developing that operations and maintenance plan to ensure that does happen. And because as you clearly pointed out, that one thing we learned from the pandemic is that our parks, trails, and open spaces and pocket parks are no longer non-essential services. They are truly essential services.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. And also wanted to just go back to the point that Councilwoman Amobian was making about capital versus operational. Ms. Bryant, so just to the explanation you gave, so the capital improvements are justified by increasing programming at the community centers, or by maintaining the current programming capacity, or can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we can both, it's a both and. So if we can show that there's going to be additional programming at the community center, we can make capital improvements. If the recreation center is already supporting programs and we have data that can justify that it is serving either particular communities or in a community that is qualified, then we can justify expenditures of maintaining the rec center, with capital improvements.
Okay, so right now you're in the process of figuring out which of those buckets each of the community center projects and pool projects fall into?
Yeah, so basically we have a plan that we've talked through with the city already. These sorts of programs where it's not kind of just clear and cut and dry, where we need to provide some sort of justification. We are writing memos for all of those types of programs in order to kind of share what the reasoning is behind and making sure that we're putting together a pretty sound argument to say this recreation center that supports these people or this population currently with these types of programs would not be able to continue to do that work if we don't make sure that the roof is, secure, or that the HVAC system is working properly. Those types of justifications are memos that we are writing that we'll be sharing with the city, and they'll be able to keep on their books. And so what will happen come audit time, when people ask for kind of justification or reasoning behind why dollars were expended in a certain way, those memos will be used as a reference.
Okay, so to that end, are there any of the current projects where the justification is going to be expanding capacity?
We don't have, so I don't have the current list right now where we've kind of dived into each one to say we're going to be doing either a capital improvement project based off of or kind of a newer project. I don't have that list right now. We have not written the memos. We have a template for them. So once the city and council, of course, come to a discussion and a decision on which ones we should do, then that's when we write the eligibility memo.
Sure. Well, I guess, that really does help, and thank you. I think that, to me, that kind of argues for, what I think we've heard from a number of other council members, which is it would help if, we're setting aside $21 million for, rehabbing and reconstructing these centers and pools. It would sound like there should be some commensurate, amount that's set aside for programming and operational capacity, so that we're not just, continuing the 2020 levels, but that we are, trying to expand that, and not just at those sites, at places like Firestone Park Community Center, at the Northwest Rec Center. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Ms. Connor, let me ask, because I know we're at 2:30, we're going over, but this is rich discussion. So we're going into some of the other committees. Ms. Connor, and then I'm going to check with Sarah just to see how we are doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Neal. I just wanted to say, one of the things we talked about longevity, as part of your guidance, when you do the Parks Challenge, there's a lot of talk about that. And they really help the neighborhoods rally those groups. Almost every park that has gone through the Park Challenge process has established a Friends of Reservoir Park, Friends of Kerr Park, to help create those long-serving people from the neighborhood that will help maintain, plant flowers, weed, host events. So that's being addressed a lot. The other thing with data, for those of you who don't know, when you sign up for a program now at the park, you do it through their online system, which collects all that data of every kid and every adult that's been in the pool, been in the art class. So we're doing a lot of that now to be ready for this program.
Thanks, Ms. Connor. Sarah, how are we doing?
I don't see any more hands raised. We are a little bit over.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your conversation. But what I'd like to see is, because I know every council member submitted suggestions, and I'm sure almost everyone had something in their suggestions that they submitted to the administration had something to do with Park and Rec. But I'd also like, from a Park and Rec standpoint, for us to keep this in mind. And I don't know, we have to have conversations with our school system. With, I'm thinking of Mr. Greg Mervis and the John S. Knight Center. They have the sport, where they look at attracting sporting events, amateur sporting events to this area. And then with our neighbors to the south and to the north, looking at what infrastructure is needed. I'd like for us to keep that in mind as well. I mean, we found with the King James tournament, later the Drew Joyce tournament, what it was the benefit of having infrastructure to bring those types of things here. Unfortunately, we're challenged to bring in a lot of those types of tournaments. But with the move towards this esport and looking at how we can build out our rec centers to maybe complement some of the smaller ones, I think is critical. I was sharing with Councilman Lombardo a conversation I had with one of the developers down in Canton with the Canton Football Hall of Fame. What they're building there is going to be an amateur sports capital of the Midwest, with the tournaments that they'll be able to bring, and they're partnering with eSport. Just like other communities benefited from when we bring Soapbox Derby or bring the LeBron James tournament, we need to look at, again, the infrastructure. How can we partner with those communities or benefit from the residual by looking at what kind of infrastructure they're building and how we can, again, complement from that. And then last but not least, with our school systems, looking at, as we build our parks, what can we do to make sure that we have the facilities that make it possible for them to provide the best recreation and the best athletic facilities for their students. Because I don't need to tell you, parents make decisions about where they send their children based on not just the academics, but to support the investment that they've made in things like sporting programs. So it'd be good for us to make sure that we have that balance there while we're making that investment. So thank you for what's been shared. I hope that we can have more collective discussion to make sure that we're touching all the bases, so we make sure that when we expense these dollars, we're doing the best, that we can with them to make them go as far as it can go. Ms. Viviano, I'll ask the committee. I don't think there's anything else to come before
Mr.
us.
Chair, Ms. Bryant from Guidehouse has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Malik. Ms. Bryant.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification. So I got a note from one of my team members saying that I may have confused things, and that was not my intention. So as far as expanded programming can happen with the use of the American Rescue Plan dollars. Expanded programming is not necessarily a requirement for renovations that go into the community rec centers. I just wanted to make sure that I provided that as a clarification in case there was any confusion.
Thank you. And I just say, Sarah, I know we got to go. I do want to acknowledge something that was brought to us last week. It was kind of innovative by Mr. John Beatty. And as we look at these, it's sort of like a hybrid between looking at the housing and the park and recreation. He forwarded to me his Create a Model Village for homeless using some of our public parks. That and I told him I would bring it before this committee just for us to keep an open mind, a creative way on how to again use these dollars to address specifically the needs that were identified that brought them here, which was the homeless. Houseless, and poverty. So with that, if I could get a motion for us to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Guidehouse.
Our next committee of the day will be the Rules Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Malik. We're ready when you are, Mr. Chair.
All right, I'd like to call the Rules Committee meeting to order. And if we could please have a roll call.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
All members are present.
Okay, very good. And we also need a motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
Make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 All right, we just have one item. This is a kind of a happy item to come before us today. And this is a resolution appointing Sarah Viviano to the position of Clerk of Council and declaring an emergency. Who would like to speak on this, please?
Mr.
Margaret,
Chair, I will start.
President Somerville, would you like to say something?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a celebratory piece. Sarah has worked for the city of Akron since 2002. And she came to council's office in 2009. And since then, Sarah has been an amazing asset to council's office and has gone over and beyond. She's earned many certificates in municipal clerk designations through different organizations. This council has benefited from all of her coursework, all of her associations, because when we need to ask things about best practices, Sarah has some amazing relationships and connections with other city clerks that can help us, guide us through. When COVID happened and it seemed as if we had to change things overnight in terms of moving to this Zoom format, we would have not been able to do that without Sarah. And so Sarah just stepped in, went over and beyond just so to make sure that the council office could continue to operate And we have not missed a beat because of her. And so we are so thankful. And so I just want to say that and hoping that all of council will approve this piece on this evening. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, President Somerville. Let's see, whose hand do we have up here? I see Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo the sentiments of President Somerville. I think we saw, particularly over the last year and a half, how essential Sarah is to the work of council. When we say that she's a pro, that is because of the certifications and all of the expertise that she brings to the subject. And finally, most importantly, she really brings a warmth and a kindness to how she engages with people that I think really reflects the best of what government can be, welcoming and accessible to folks. It's something I try to emulate, that spirit. So just thank you so much for your service, and looking forward to your new role, and looking forward to continuing to learn from you and work with you.
Well put. Thank you, Mr. Malik. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to echo. I appreciate Sarah. We call her at maybe for a last minute proclamation or some last minute information, or she's helping us with our constituents. Really appreciate it. I don't want it to go missed that she hasn't just rested on institutional knowledge. She has gone out and sought best practice information within her profession. She's a pro's pro. And as has already been mentioned, brings that back to make us as a council shine. So I just thank you. I didn't know we started around the same time as far as council. But really appreciate you. And as Council President said, this is a celebratory time. So congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. And I'll come to Ms. Amobian now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo everything that's been said about Sarah. I can tell you that she has taken very good care of me and probably all new council persons with information, last minute details, planning for trainings and all kinds of things. I just hope that we are taking good care of her financially too. I don't know what this salary range is, but if we can get to as close to the top of it as we can, that'll be fantastic, because she has not only done her job for the last, 12 years or whatever. I think she has pretty much run the clerk's office in many instances. So thank you very much for that.
Wonderful words. Thank you, Ms. Amobian. Ms. Connor?
I was hoping there was another raised hand so I could say, yay! Sarah, spectacular. Made us feel welcome the very first day. I'm sure five new people all at once was a little overwhelming, but she's done a wonderful job, and I'm so glad she's going to be the clerk.
Very good. Ms. Baylor?
Yes, I echo all the different comments that have been made, especially the one that Councilman Malik made about her demeanor and how she handles things and her temperament. She's such a wonderful person inside and out. And she has, like Councilwoman Amobian have said, she's taken good care of us. I'm telling you, some of the things that I've asked of her that were nowhere in her job description or role, she would help me with. So I just appreciate her. And, I'm looking forward to continuing to work with her, and I'm just happy for her. She deserves this. And I'm so glad that it's finally arrived.
Thank you, Ms. Baylor. Ms. Mosley?
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. There's no one more deserving of this than Sarah. Such a kind person, warm spirit. And even if you're having a bad day, Sarah finds a way to make you smile. And I think we need that. And no one deserves this more than you, Sarah. Congratulations.
Mr. Lombardo, I thought I saw your hand up, but
Right, I was up.
okay, go right ahead.
Thank you. Yes, just wanted to let Sarah know this is well deserved. As a new council person, definitely made us feel welcome and was at our, beck and call with all our requests, and she's very responsive and attentive to our needs. And I'm just not saying this because we're like paisans or anything like that, but she's very professional, and I am glad she is getting this title. Good job,
Excellent.
Sarah.
Thank you. Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sarah, she's the best. Best in the state of Ohio. I don't care what any other council member in the state of Ohio would say. We have the best clerk right here in Akron. Sarah goes above and beyond. It's been said before me by my colleagues, but she does a wonderful job, always answers the phone. I could go on and on and on, but I will say she's the best. We have her right here in the city of Akron, and she's here to stay, even past retirement. So congratulations, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamer. Mr. Fusco.
Yeah, just briefly, obviously everyone is just hitting all the right notes. I'm hoping someone tonight, I should say, council as a whole, there's no question about it. I think we can all agree on this one. So but a couple of real quick things, just that, with the last couple of years, it's been a truly challenging time for all of us and our families and everyone. And Sarah, as opposed to stepping back, she stepped up, and she learned, Zooming and all kinds of things, and taught us, really, if you think about it. Not only that, she also isn't afraid to make sure that we stay in bounds. She's not afraid to say, well, think about this and that, and so on and so forth. So she makes sure that we stay in bounds, and so appreciate that. And so, hopefully tonight we'll be able to go ahead and pass this out. I'm sure we will, and let's do it as council as a whole. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. Wow, Sarah. Okay, in honor of the occasion, I've written a song that I'd like to sing right now, Sarah. So you have obviously earned everything that every word of praise that's been given to you that has been earned, and we deeply do appreciate the work that you do. So do I have a motion to suspend the rules and issue a favorable report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 All right, great. We will revisit this evening. Thank you again for your work, Sarah. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next committee will be the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Mosley, Hamer, Holland, Lombardo, and McKittrick. Whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
I'm ready. If I could get approval of our previous meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee to apply for and, if awarded, accept grant funding and or enter into a grant agreement, transportation alternative set aside, Clean Ohio Trail Fund, and Ohio and Erie Canalway Strategic Initiative Program for further development of the Rubber City Heritage Trail in an emergency. So who do I have here? Is Mr. Lettle here?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Public Service Committee, you guys passed last week support for this trail and the Rubber City Heritage Trail. This legislation will allow us to apply and accept grant funding for this process. Where we're at right now, we are in design for the first phase and for all phases, all the way through 7. So I think most of you are familiar with this. It's going to start over by Goodyear off of River Street, and the first phase takes us up by Fire Station 2 on Exchange, and then we go from there behind Dave's Market in the old rail bed, and then we come around And then we, this touches almost every ward. The final phase, I said 8 phases. Well, phase 9 is actually in Ellett in Ward 6, but this first phase is Ward 10 and Ward 5. And then there's a little piece of Ward 1 it touches once it comes back south around Dave's Market, Ward 3, and then Ward 7, and it ends down at the Wilba Trailhead. So we're very excited about this. We've got a lot of commitments. We appreciate your support, and we're going to continue. Now, construction was slated for 2024, but some of this funding looks like it could be available earlier. So we'd like to move the construction up to 2023. Very optimistic maybe next year, but I think really 2023 is the year where we'll start construction. So with that, I will take any questions.
Do I have any questions from committee members? Councilman Fusco?
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Yeah, we're all quite aware of this and what it brings, not only to all the neighborhoods, connecting the neighborhoods, but it's also going to connect the University of Akron. It's going to connect major employment centers such as the hospitals. It's just going to be a great asset for the east and southern sides of town. And so I would like to ask my name to be added, and whoever the other wards as well, ask that their names be added if they're so inclined. But we've been cheering for this thing, it seems like, for a really long time. I remember being in meetings with you, Chairwoman Mosley and Mr. Kamer and Sharon, of course. And so we're excited about this. This is great news. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members, committee members? I'm seeing none. Can I get a motion for suspension of the rules with favorable report?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Seeing that we have nothing else coming before us, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
We can move right into the Public Utilities and Green Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, McKittrick, Connor, Mosley, and Holland. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. I'd like to call the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting to order. If we could please have a roll call of all members.
Freeman.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
All members are present.
Okay, very good. If we could have a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very, very good. All right, we have 2 items coming before us here. First is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction improvement to the ventilation system in the water reclamation facilities north blower building and declaring an emergency. And who do we have speaking for us today? That be Mr. Little?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman and members of the committee. Some of you remember back in 2013, we upgraded the blowers down at the water reclamation facility in our secondary aeration basins, which saved considerable amount of money every year. I mean, we reduced our carbon footprint on that project alone by half. Well, what we found in the last couple of years, and we did notice it before, but it wasn't as prevalent, is these 90-degree days or 88 to 92-degree days, we have to actually turn down these blowers because of overheating. So what this project will allow us to do is put some extra ventilation in to the blower room to allow these fans to cool down, and we'll be able to run them. So what's happened, especially this past year, we were actually turning these down to a point where we needed extra air, and we had to bring on the old blowers. So it was actually costing us between $10,000 and $13,000 a month to run the old blowers. Well, with this new system, we won't have to do this. So Tom Smith has worked on this probably for 6 or 8 months. And we are going to have about a 6 to 8 year payback on this project, where we will save between, like I said, $10,000 and $13,000 a month to run and we won't have to run the old blowers. And by doing that, we'll be able to keep our efficiency down at the plant, reduce our carbon footprint. And also, like I said, the payback will be 6 to 8 years on this system.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Looking around here, do not see any hands. Please, extend our gratitude to Tom. He's a great employee. Do I have a motion? Would you want the rules suspended, or would consent be okay?
Consent's fine. We're going to bid this project, sir.
Okay, very good. So looking for a motion for consent.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All right, very good. We'll place that item on the consent agenda. Next, we have a resolution approving and confirming the appointment of Patricia Wyatt to the Tree Commission for the term expiring on January 1st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yes, I'd like to welcome Patricia Wyatt, who's actually on the call with us today. She was able to join for a few minutes, and I want to welcome her. We look forward to her joining our tree commission. It was kind of difficult, and with Councilman Fusco's help, we've re-engaged. We've got some meetings scheduled, so we're going to get going next month, and we look forward. I think all of you got her resume, but I think everybody knows Mrs. Wyatt from the North Hill Community House, the work she's done on North Hill. So I think her resume speaks for itself, but I will take any questions, but I will allow her to say a few words if you would like, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wyatt.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of the Tree Commission. I'm excited and ready to get to work.
Fantastic. Well, we should be thanking you. Thank you very, very much. Any comments or questions from committee members or any other council members? Yes, Ms. Connor.
Welcome, Miss Wyatt. We're so happy to have you. With all the work being done and these orchards being planted all over the city, we look forward to your input and dedication to the Tree Commission. So ongoing with the tree canopy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lombardo, please.
Thank you. Just wanted to welcome Patricia into the Tree Commission. She is a Ward 2 member, a resident, and she's very active in the community. Like Mr. Lovell said, with the North Hill Community House and the children of Akron. So it's a good selection, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Wyatt. So do I have a motion for suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Okay, very good. Again, thank you, Patricia, and we will pass that out this evening, and we will adjourn at 2:53. Thank you.
Our next committee for the day is the Budget and Finance Committee. That will begin at 3 o'clock. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Molick, Baylor, and Lombardo. Again, that will begin at 3 o'clock. Since it's just a couple minutes away, we can leave our live stream going. You're welcome to turn off your camera if you would like, and join us back at 3 o'clock. Thanks.